As we faculty and you students prepare for your arrival this fall, I thought that we could reflect on Parshas vaetchachan to understand from one of the most profound educational experiences that the Jewish people have ever experienced in their history, what an educational experience is supposed to be like. Parshas vaetchachan describes in great detail Ma'amad Har Sinai. In Ma'amad Har Sinai, the teacher was no less than HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and the students were Dor Hamidbar, Dor Deya. The Pasuk, Perek Daled, Devarim, Pasuk Lamed Vav, reads, Min hashamayim hishmiacha es kolo liyasrecha, val ha'aretz herecha es isho hagdola, udevarav shamata mitocha eish. Hashem made himself heard, made his voice heard from the heavens in order to bind us, in order to discipline us. And on the earth, he showed his fire, his great fire. And his words we heard from within the fire. The Mechilta in Yisro uses this verse in order to resolve an apparent contradiction between two verses there. Here we see that God, on the one hand, spoke from heaven, and on the other hand, we heard him on earth. In Parshas Yisro, in Perek Yud Tes, Pasuk Chaf, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai el Rosh Hahar, V'ikra Hashem leMoshe el Rosh Hahar, Vayal Moshe. Hashem descended onto Har Sinai, and he called to Moshe, to the top of Har Sinai. Rabbi Akiva understands from this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order to teach his incredibly profound Torah, descended, came down, limited his flow of infinite knowledge in order to make it palatable, in order to make into a bite-sized piece which can be digested by us, small creatures down here. On the other hand, the verse in Pasuk Chaf, in Perek Chaf, Pasuk Yud Tes, says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Ko tomar el b'nei Yisrael, atem re'isim, ki min hashamayim dibarti machem. The verse says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to us from the heavens. On this, Rabbi Yehuda Anasi explains that Klal Yisrael was lifted up to a perception, to an understanding that we otherwise would never be able to gain, in order to be able to understand the Torah in all of its purity, in all of its greatness, in all of its glory. Rabbi Akiva understands that for an educational experience to be real, the message has to be brought down to a level where the students can take something home with them, to a level of practical knowledge. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi understands that the purity of the message must never be compromised, but instead, the students have to work to climb to a level in order to be able to appreciate the message in all of its glory. The Mechilta says that Rabbi Yishmael uses our pasuk from Devarim in order to be able to reach a compromise. Min hashamayim hishma kolo liyasreka, val ha'aretz herecha es isho hagdola udvarav shamata mitocha eish. HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that the Torah is too precious in order to limit it and compromise it, and therefore, he spoke out the Torah with all of its greatness, with its infinite wonder, and it came out in an incomprehensible kol. A kol very similar to what we hear in the shofar blast on Rosh Hashanah. Ineffable, incredibly inspiring, incredibly moving and motivating, but very difficult to assimilate into a practical life. And therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu then taught the Torah again. He taught the Torah in a way that we could hear not just a kol, but divarav, his words we heard from inside a fire which illuminates our world down here. Ve'al ha'aretz herecha es isho hagdola udevarav shamata mitocha eish. I think that's our challenge this year. Our challenge this year, on the one hand, is to hear the voice, the kol, the message that we understand can't completely affect our lives, but can give us motivation, can give us inspiration. We have to raise ourselves up to see the big picture in all of its glory, in all of its purity, without any compromise. But then we have to struggle to take that message and translate it into bite-sized pieces that we can digest, assimilate, and use in our practical world. We welcome you to Michlala, and we look forward to a year of challenge, of growth, of having high ideals and practical work. Welcome.